In this lecture, we'll design the settings screen for our app. You can see it right here. It's pretty simple and clean, and there's an interesting header here on top with some icons in the background. And actually you can see these icons I'm using right here on the right, and we just have them here saved, so it's gonna be easier for us to complete this design. So we're going to select all the elements that we have in our screen here, and we're just gonna get rid of it so we can start from scratch. First of all, let's rename this to just settings. And now we're going to add the header as we did in the previous lecture. And we did this by selecting it from the symbols panel here on the left. And what we need to do is just drag it here in our settings screen and position it correctly. And now we need to change the title of the screen from browse to settings. And as this is a symbol, we need to make sure that this change only happens in our instance here. So what we need to do, like we did in the previous lecture, is to ungroup the symbol. And now if we go back to our layers panel, we have all the individual layers here, which we're going to group again into a new folder, which we'll call header. And now by selecting just the browse text, we can simply change it into settings. Alright, so now we're going to create a new rectangle, which we're going to position just below the header. About this size. We're going to remove the border, change the color using our pink that we have saved here, and tune down the opacity a little bit so that we have a smoother kind of pink, about 80%. Okay, so now we can start creating the icon pattern, which we have here in the background. And I used all these icons you can see here to come up with that pattern, and then I just used a repeat grid. So let me show you how it's done. So we're gonna move back to Font Awesome, which is where I got most of the icons, and I'm going to get the first one of the list, and then the rest of the others we're just gonna take them from the icons we have in XD. So let's get this money icon here. We're gonna copy it, then we're going back to XD. We're going to use the text tool. We're gonna paste it, selecting it again, and change the font to Font Awesome. And as you can see now, we have our little icon there, but at the moment it's still a piece of text. So what we're gonna do is going to select it, object, and path, convert to path. So right now we basically have a vector shape which behaves exactly like a vector. So we're going to change the fill to white, and we're gonna position it here on top and nudge it a little bit on the left. And as you can see, it's very similar to the one we have here. So actually let's remove the border and we're done. Alright, so now we can start adding the other icons, and we're going to get them from here and just duplicate them. So Alt, click and drag back into our canvas here. And we're just going to position them a bit randomly, so that in the end we're going to create a pattern which we can replicate across the whole pink section we have here. Okay, so now we're going to lock this layer here. We're going to select all of these icons and we're gonna group them. Let's rename this to just icons. And then we'll select the repeat grid so that we can drag all the way to the right and basically fill up the space we have. And we can just decrease the spacing between the two instances that we just created to 0 pixels basically, or maybe a little more. Let's say 7 pixels. And it looks like this, which is pretty good. We're just going to select it again and put down the opacity until it looks quite visible, but not that much, so about 15%. I think that works. Alright, so now that our background is done, we can start putting in some text. I'm gonna change it to white, change the font to Lato, and put it to bold as well, and maybe decrease it a little bit. And we're gonna center it. Then we're going to duplicate it and write some more random text here. And we're gonna decrease the size and use a light font weight as well, and slightly decrease the opacity to about 90%, and we're gonna center it and position it just below the title on top. And now we're gonna create a button, so rectangle tool, and let's round up the borders, the corners, about 20 pixels. We're gonna remove the border here and center it. And now we're gonna create some text, so we duplicate this again. We're just gonna put it in the layers panel on top of the rectangle. I'm gonna change the text color right away using our pink. I'm gonna change it to bold and put down the size a little bit. And we just center it in right in the middle of the button. Actually, this button seems a little too small for the text, so by holding the Alt key and dragging one of the handles, we're just gonna make it a little longer. As you can see, it increased the size on both sides of the rectangle. Okay, so now we're gonna go on and create the actual settings for this screen. So we're going to draw a rectangle down here, make it a bit smaller. We're gonna remove the border and change the fill to our light gray that we already have here. And now we need to also create a little line that will separate the white from the gray. So we're gonna line it on top here, and we're going to use the same color of this line up here. And we're going to create some text as well. Actually, we can grab this text here and just duplicate it and put it down. We need to move it all the way up to the list of layers. So we're going to change the text, all caps. We're going to change the color as well, put down the opacity to about 60%, and we want to change the font size as well down to 12. And also in this case, as Lato is a font that doesn't have a lot of space between characters when you are using all caps, it's probably better to increase this value and increase the spacing between characters. So with 100 it makes it just a little bit more readable, as you can see. So we're gonna grab this text, move it all the way to the left, and move it to the right by 20 pixels. And move it down a little bit as well. Okay, so now we're gonna draw another line, which is gonna be 335 pixels long. So that if we center it, it's gonna be 20 pixels from each side of the screen. Let's move it all the way up here and move it down by 60 pixels. And actually we need to change the color using the same color of this line we have up here. And let's create our text as well. Going to make it regular and put it down to 15 pixels and align it to the line here. We're going to duplicate this, align it to the right, change the text, decrease the size a little bit and change the color to our pink here. And actually let's move this up a little bit so that it's better aligned. Alright, so we're gonna select these layers here. We're gonna group them together. Let's rename it and we're going to duplicate it and drag it down until we see the same distance between the upper part of the section. We select it again and we do it again. And now it's just a matter of replacing the text. Okay, so before moving on, we need to tidy up our layers panel a little bit, as it's quite messy right now. So let's move the header all the way to the top. Let's group this button here. And let's group all the layers actually of the top part. Gonna move it just below the header, and we're gonna move these 3 layers as well. Okay, so now we're gonna select these 2 layer groups here. We're going to duplicate them and drag them down here. We actually need to get rid of this line here. And we're gonna duplicate this other line here. And move it up. So we're going to get rid of this text here. And instead we need a little toggle that we're gonna get from the Apple iOS default UI kit already included in XD, and we can get it from here. So we just select it, copy it, and go back here and paste it. And we move it down here, aligned with the rest. And let's just change the color a little bit. Change the border as well, slightly darker gray, and align it with the line below. And now that we have this setting, we're going to select this group and duplicate it. And we're just gonna change this toggle here, move it on the other side, and change the main color to our blue here, and also the border. And now we just need to change the text here. Now let's just fix the alignments of some of our elements here, like this one here. And this text here as well, it's not properly centered vertically. And this one, which is the same. Alright, so I think it looks pretty good and we're done with this screen, so I guess I'll see you in the next lecture.